Good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to today's Tropical Outlook. Just want to give you a quick reminder that tomorrow the live stream is back. It is the 155th edition, looking at the extremes of summer 2025. I will leave a link in the description below, so do click onto that, hit the notify me bell, and you will get a reminder when I go live tomorrow at around 4 p.m. So I hope you can join me for that. It should be a good one, an interesting one. Lots of extreme aspects of summer 2025 to discuss, and obviously it was the warmest for the UK, Ireland, for China, the Koreas, Japan. It's been quite a remarkable summer overall, and we will look at that in quite a bit of detail in tomorrow's stream, so I hope you can join me for that. So, looking at the global tropics then, we have two features here off the east side of Honshu, Japan. We did have a glancing blow, bringing flood and rain and some damaging winds in the last couple of days. We've got an invest area just west of Luzon in the Philippines. We've got invest area 91L. No significant impacts on any sort of even rapid development is not going to happen over the next several days, so I'm not overly enthused by that feature. I think the big story is probably Hurricane Kiko, that is I was going to say halfway between North America and Hawaii, but it's probably closer to Hawaii, but still a good 800 or so miles to the east-southeast of the Hawaiian Islands. Currently maximum sustained winds at 115 knots, so it is a major system at the moment. And if we look at the latest IR imagery, you can see quite clearly this feature right at the very edge of the screen there. You can see Kiko drifting westwards here. Quite a nicely defined eye. It lost its eye during the course of yesterday, but it's regained a clear eye. So it's underwent an eye wall replacement cycle. It's re-strengthened. The good news for Hawaii is that it is going to encounter some cooler waters, which therefore should weaken it long before reaching the Hawaiian Islands. We've got the usual convection here through the intertropical belt, East Pacific, extend through the northern portions of South America into the Atlantic Basin. We've got two frontal systems to speak about. One old front that brought heavy rainfall in Miami-Dade area during the course of Friday, and we've got another frontal system introducing cold Canadian air into the upper Midwest that is got some convection associated with it as well, stretching anywhere from the north of Nevada all the way across to the mid-Mississippi Valley, for example, here. So that frontal system is going to continue to track south-southeast over the next few days. So looking at Kiko in a little bit more detail then, like I say, it underwent an eye wall replacement cycle during the course of Friday, but it is looking very, very healthy at this time of recording, which is actually late Friday into the early hours of Saturday morning. This video is being recorded, but looking very healthy indeed at the moment. A robust, good environment, light winds, plenty of moisture surrounding the system. It's got plenty of room for it to breathe and just chug along over the next several days or so. So obviously we've got the system over the Atlantic Basin at the moment. NHC has actually lowered the chances of development from 90% down to 70% actually, and the reasons for that is that it's very, very poorly organised, and it's also got quite a lot of dry air that is inhibiting the organisation and the development of this feature. NHC, as of the 2 p.m. Eastern, Friday the 5th of September update, shower and thunderstorm activity is currently limited and disorganized in association with a tropical wave over the central tropical Atlantic. Low upper level winds are generally favorable for development. Environmental dry air is likely to limit development over the next couple of days. However, tropical depression could still form early next week as the system moves westwards at around 10 miles per hour across the tropical central Atlantic. This system is likely to be near the Lesser Antilles by the middle to latter part of next week, and interest there should monitor. So over the next 48 hours, we've got a 40% chance of development, and over the next 7 days, we've only got a 70% chance of development here. Nothing else really to speak about, it has to be said. And if we look at the latest of the ECMWF, this is a tropical depression development and also strike probability. And you can see here that we've got a little bit of a increased chance of development over the central tropical Indian Ocean. Now the MJO, the upward motion, is over this part of the world at the moment here, so that allows a greater probability of some sort of spin up to develop. We've also got a little area just off the southeast Chinese coast, off the Japanese coast over the Sea of Japan. We've got obviously Kiko here with that greatest probability. Obviously we've got Kiko at this moment in time, hence why it's showing that. Got a little bit of raised probability off the west coast of Mexico and also over the tropical Atlantic. If we skip on to the period 15th through the 22nd, those chances very marginally increase. But you notice here that we've still got relatively low probability, only generally a 5 to 10% chance of development between the 15th and the 22nd of September, which really is quite remarkable given the fact that we're now approaching the climatological peak of the Atlantic season, which is around about the 10th of September. And with the MJO looking relatively at the moment, it's marginal. It's really marginal, to say the least. We've got the greatest upward motion over the central tropical Indian Ocean, hence why we've got that little area of potential development. But obviously you don't get anything really spinning up over the equator itself. But I want to draw your attention. So this is the vertical velocity potential of the ECMWF model today, showing the greens representing upward motion and the oranges representing subsidence sinking motion, that lid within the atmosphere that suppresses upward motion and tropical development here. You notice that we've got a lot of the greens over the Indian Ocean maritime continent. We've seen a surplus of rainfall into India. It looks as if we are at around 8% above average for the Indian monsoon so far. We'll look at that in a second. But we've also seen a lot of wet weather through the Malay Peninsula into Indonesia and also into Australia as well, by the way. And this situation here, where you've got the upward branch of the circulation over the Indian Ocean and maritime continent, you've got the sinking branch over the East Pacific. That would tend to squash any development potential over the East Pacific, but also into the Atlantic Basin. Now, what may happen, and is interesting, this is out to 120 hours, we've still got the upward motion over the Indian Ocean, but we're starting to see an eastward progression of that green area representing rising motion. If we continue to play through here, albeit it isn't overly strong, we've not got these dark green colours representing strong divergence aloft. We do have greens, however, showing up over South America and into the west and central portion of the Atlantic Basin. This is out to Friday the 19th of September. So that's something to perhaps pay attention to. Let's have a look and see what the weeklies of the CFSV2 is showing here for the same time frame. So just a sec. So this is over the next 7 days. Again, there's the upward motion versus the sinking motion, suppression over the Atlantic, upward motion, a breathability of the air, possibility of cyclogenesis over the Indian Ocean and the maritime continent. But you notice here in the week 2, you've got a little bit of a change taking place over the Atlantic Basin. So that's something that we need to pay attention to. But there's nothing really imminent showing up, and I'm not overly enthusiastic about seeing anything significant over the next wee while. Rainfall wise, obviously I try to in this year's tropical outlooks look at the southwest monsoon, India, and also rainfall distribution globally. And this is the last 30-day period, especially when the tropics are relatively quiet at the moment. This is the last 30 days in terms of rainfall. And I want to draw your attention here to fairly widespread dryness over the eastern United States, extend through Central America, which is interesting. Over South America, we've got some wetter conditions up into Venezuela and Colombia. But Africa is quite interesting through that main belt of convergence here, where you've got the African easterly waves that develop over around about the Somalia, the portion of the Ethiopian highlands, for example. That's usually the birthplace of tropical waves. They then ride that easterly African jet and then exit off the west coast of Africa, move out into the Atlantic, and then potentially develop. Usually about the kind of 55 to about 50 to 55 waves come off Africa on average every summer season and fall season here. But notice here that we've got weather conditions over the eastern side of equatorial Africa, over India, and also over southeastern Asia, extending up into eastern China. Now, granted, we have very dry conditions along that region here around Shanghai, for example, in Taiwan, but very wet conditions across parts of Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, Myanmar as well, then extending up into eastern China, away from that dry region here. You've had quite significant amounts of rainfall. But if we look specifically at Asia over the last 30 days in terms of rainfall distribution, quite wet across parts of southern Russia. There's that region here of eastern China, away from this interesting dry slot here. But the majority of eastern and central China has been very wet. Into the Philippines as well, we've had very wet conditions, and then Laos, Vietnam, into Thailand, into Myanmar, and then across a good chunk of India. It's been wetter than average over the last 30-day period. Let's have a quick look then at the rainfall anomalies over the last 7 days. And you can see here that in terms of Asia, at least anyway, northern and central portions of India has been wetter than average, drier than average across the south. And we've got generally around that Malay Peninsula, we've had a wetter than average signal. Northern portions of China has been wet than average, but further south has been drier than average. And we've got a little bit of a contrast here, dry across the majority of Honshu, but up into the far north and in the Hokkaido, we've had a wetter than average signal here. Looking then at Africa, and you can see here that the region that you would expect it to be wettest has actually been pretty dry compared to average. It's actually more the Sahel region, the sub-Saharan African region, that has been wetter than average over the last 7 days or so. I want to draw your attention then to the Indian monsoon then. Monsoon progressing. This is off All India Weather on Twitter. That the monsoon progressing smoothly with a 9% above normal so far. In the next 15 days, it may cross the 10% mark and may come under excess monsoon year category, according to the Indian Meteorological Department. Now, what's interesting about that is I googled that. The last time the Indian monsoon was in excess of 10% above normal was in 1994, according to Google anyway. So I don't know how accurate that is, but certainly we've had a robust monsoon season across India, obviously a vital part of the Indian economy, and we've obviously seen tremendous amounts of flooding in many areas. Gujarat, Rajasthan has been very hard hit. That extends up into Punjab, both in India as well as into Pakistan. We've had very wet conditions into Bangladesh as well. So it has been very, very wet over the last 2 to 3 months here, and beyond that across a vast area, particularly central and northern portions of India. So I thought that was quite interesting to show. In terms of rainfall expectation over the next wee while, we've got the continuation of wet weather associated with that MJ over the East Indian Ocean and maritime continent. We've got wetter than average conditions most of Australia, extending through Indonesia and into Southeast Asia, eastern portions of China, wetter than average. And we've also got wetter than average, interestingly, across the equatorial regions of the Atlantic Basin, in the parts of the southern Caribbean, off the east coast, drier than average, northern Caribbean and into the Gulf of America, wet off the east coast, like I say, Also wet across Europe, and this has been an interesting shift in the pattern. Bit of a kind of West European monsoon that has kind of came about over the last week to 10 days, and it looks as if it's going to remain wetter than average into western areas of Europe. It'll be interesting to see any development over the next couple of weeks. 2 to 3 weeks could be important in terms of the type of pattern we see over the North Atlantic and over Europe, extending into later September and into October. And leading on beyond that, I want to draw your attention to the fact that the tropics has a very key role and can have a key role at this time of the year in terms of Western Europe. But this October rainfall, according to the CFSV2 for Europe, wetter than average signal showing up here, and then even into the month of November, it's also showing wetter than average as well. What role does the tropics have? That's going to be an interesting question that will be answered only in time. But if we play through here, you can see a wet signal continuing to show. This is all the way out to the 18th of September, wet across India. Much of Eastern Asia really is looking quite wet. Indonesia is looking wet as well. A little bit less of a wet signal over Australia. We've continued to see that wet signal over the UK, Ireland. Got the high pressure between the Azores and Iberia. Got moisture moving off Africa around that area of high pressure and then up into the western side of Europe here. But it's interesting to see, even as we continue to play all the way out to 26th of September, we've got an increasingly wet signal here to the east of the Philippines through eastern side of Indonesia, but still wet across Southeast Asia and India, a little bit wetter than average through Africa as well here. So that is going to be something to continue to monitor, and that's exactly what we're going to do here on this channel, particularly with the tropical outlooks here. So I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing. Obviously not just looking purely at the UK, Ireland or Europe, but looking at the global picture. There is so many things to consider when it comes to global weather, and I certainly hope that I can provide you with as much information as possible. If you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a single penny. Content unbiased, unhyped, 7 days a week. So yes, thanks for watching today's video, and check out the live stream that will be available tomorrow at 4 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Bye for now.